writer Chip Zdarsky's run on Batman comes to an end with Batman issue 157. I'll probably talk at length about Chip Zdarsky's entire Batman run at a later date, but one thing I'll say here is that he really stuck the landing with these last 4 or 5 issues. This Dying City story has been the best he's given us. This issue feels very timely for a number of reasons. We've got Batman basically trying to prevent World War III because of a Russian villain. There's talk about like the wealth gap, the rich versus people that are living paycheck to paycheck. But moreover, there's talk in this story about what constitutes a good man, or I guess a good person in general, and how you can still be a good person despite mistakes that you may have made, whether in your distant past or in your recent past. That's really, really good subject matter for a Batman story. And I think it's largely why I've enjoyed these past several issues of Zdarsky's as much as I have. Minor spoiler here, I guess, but earlier in the Dying City storyline, Jim Gordon shoots and kills the mayor of Gotham City, but we find out later that the Mad Hatter put like mind control tech in his glasses, so it's like maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't him. How much must the Mad Hatter get blamed for things in the DC universe? Like in that Gotham City community. I mean, he's the mind control supervillain. You'd think that a lot of things would just get scapegoated onto him by default. Yeah, honey, okay, things got a little out of control at that bachelor party, but you know what? I was wearing a hat. This is Gotham City, the Mad Hatter. You know what I'm saying? So after reading Absolute Superman number 4, I have a question, and I think it's a pretty reasonable and pertinent question, all things considered. Is he still Superman if he doesn't have the cape? Like, to what extent, without the cape, are we taking away his Superman-ness? Yeah, Superman hasn't always been able to fly, but he has always had the cape. That's been part of his costume since his earliest incarnation, and, it's probably the most recognizable thing about the costume. I mean, to the point where in American culture, or really any culture, I would think, if you put a cape on, people think of Superman. But and for some reason this didn't register with me fully until this issue, Absolute Superman does not have a cape. Even in the imagery where he appears to have a cape. Absolute Superman has like a cloud of red sunstone dust that follows him around everywhere. Sunstone being a mineral from Krypton, so it's like superpowered, and he can envelop himself in it and envelop other people like Lois Lane in it. And like, for instance, if you look at the cover to Absolute Superman number 1 closely, you can see that that's not a cape. Like, the red part is granulated, like sand or dust. So yeah, Absolute Superman has a dust cloud that follows him around. It's like Superman meets Pigpen in that sense. I think that if you did that in the regular canonical Superman book, people would just laugh it off. But because this is an alternate take on Superman, it might work. I guess the jury is still out for me, is what I'm saying, on the character that, for one time only, I will affectionately call Pigpen Superman. This issue has a nice global perspective. Much of it takes place in Pakistan, but as we open the issue, Lois Lane is interviewing people who've had Superman encounters from around the world. There's a moment in this issue where Lois Lane, who, remember, in this series is like a soldier type, breaks somebody's fingers. This is one of those pages that you just sort of look at and go, ooh. But I mean, it does its job in that regard. In talking about and kind of critiquing comics the way I do here, I usually try pretty hard to judge books based on what they are, as opposed to what they aren't. like what's actually in the book versus what I think should be in the book, maybe. But I'm having a hard time doing that with this Green Lantern Corps #1 issue. And I think I need to talk it out. So we have our regular Green Lantern book starring Hal Jordan, of course. This Green Lantern Corps book seems to star all the other Green Lanterns that DC has created over several decades. But yeah, they patrol space and they fight bad guys. It looks like John Stewart is going to be our main character for this book, at least at this early juncture, which is fine, I guess. Artistically, this book is really fun. Our penciler, Fernando Pasarin, gives us a lot of great detail, which is always cool in a sci-fi story like this. The colors really pop. There's a sequence on, I think, Starfire's home planet in this issue that's really well done. Based on this issue, I'm not super enticed to come back for more from a writing standpoint, and I think that's because I wanted something that I didn't get. And I actually think it would be in DC's best interest to give it to me and to the readers in general. So Green Lantern Guy Gardner falls under the umbrella of the Green Lantern Corps, obviously. We see him here pictured on the cover. And Guy Gardner is a unique character amongst the Green Lanterns in that he's kind of the Corps' resident sarcastic jerk, like he's the guy with the attitude. But Guy is not prominently featured in this issue. As I said, the emphasis is on John Stewart and just other people. That's weird to me, based not only on the fact that Guy is one of the more interesting Green Lantern characters that DC has, but Guy is going to be in the upcoming Superman movie that comes out this July. He's going to be played by Nathan Fillion. And Guy was just prominently featured in a Super Bowl ad for the Superman movie, which is a sentence I never thought I'd utter for a variety of reasons. But if the Superman movie is as good as DC wants and really needs it to be, and Nathan Fillion is as good with the Guy Gardner character as DC wants and needs him to be, you would think that once the movie comes out, people are going to be drawn to the Guy Gardner character, and, those who are inclined to read comics are going to want to read more about him. So it would very much behoove DC to have a Guy Gardner book that people can flock to after seeing the movie, but they didn't do that. They went with this Green Lantern Corps book. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a Green Lantern Corps book in principle. I'm just saying that maybe now would have been a good time to go the Guy Gardner route. I'm also kind of concerned that this book has too many characters in it that are going to wind up being underserved. Like, look at the cover. It almost looks like they're all fighting to get into the camera frame and get your attention. Like, for instance, Sojourner Malign is in this book. She was the main character in Far Sector, which is a fantastic Green Lantern story. She's a character that really deserves her own spotlight and her own book to explore the far sectors of the universe. But instead, I'm kind of worried that she's being shoved into this Green Lantern Corps book because they don't have any other place to put her right now. And she deserves better than that. I don't know. I know I'm doing a lot of complaining and that there's a lot of conjecture involved here. Bottom line, I think if you like Green Lantern stuff, you'll like this Green Lantern Corps book. But I'm just wondering if this was the book that the market was looking for right now. In the opening pages of Aquaman #2, Aquaman comes up out of the ground, like out of the dirt and stuff. It's kind of outside his wheelhouse, given, the whole Aqua thing, but that's kind of the point. So our author here, Jeremy Adams, recently gave an interview to, I think it was Comic Book Couples Counseling, shout out to them. But essentially the gist of what he said was we've had Aquaman saving boats and stuff for like 50 years now, and it's time to have him start doing other things and sort of getting outside his normal wheelhouse. And And that strategy is very much evident when we open this issue. Not only do we have the coming up from the ground sequence, we've got some monsters in here, we've got some fantasy elements. No disrespect to any previous Aquaman writers, but Finding Nemo, this ain't. One of the cool sort of twists in this book is that Aquaman is now a hydrokinetic, hydrokinesis, I think is what it's called. He can manipulate water with his mind and whatnot. And of course, the world at large, as well as human beings, are basically 80% water. So if you can control water, that opens up a lot of interesting, creative doors. And we see that here. You know, maybe it's just me, but I think the orange on Aquaman's shirt kind of pops more than it normally does in this book. So shout out to our colorist, Rex Locus. Obviously, it's early yet, but, you know, I haven't been this interested in an Aquaman book probably since Jeff Johns and Yvonne Reese worked on the title back in like 2011, 2012. So I'm very interested to see what we get next. In Wonder Woman number 18, Diana storms the White House to confront an evil president of the United States. Hey, I didn't say anything, okay? I decided I was going to be a little more measured with the politics. I am just going to put this picture up, though. I actually really wasn't thinking about current events when I read this issue, though. Incidentally, we do get a great full-page shot of Diana walking toward the White House by our penciler Daniel Sampere and our colorist Tomio Mori. No, I actually spent most of this issue thinking about the Washington Monument. So in Wonder Woman number 6, which actually came out a year ago this month, they did a big battle scene between Diana and a bunch of villains where the Washington Monument gets destroyed. Giganta uses it to try to crush Diana. And you know, at the time I was surprised that they did that with the Washington Monument, but I wasn't offended. I mean, that kind of thing happens in superhero comics sometimes. The big landmark always gets rebuilt. It's just part of the game. But then at the beginning of this issue, we have Diana sitting at the foot of the rebuilt Washington Monument, and the narration tells us, you know, how it was rebuilt, the whole process, etc. But a thought occurred to me, a thought that made me recoil and, I'll confess, chuckle a little bit. I've talked at length about our author here, Tom King, before, and how there's a quality to his writing that makes it feel at certain points unapologetically brash. And you know, that quality has served him well on this Wonder Woman book. Possibly better than at any other point in his mainstream comic book writing career. But for my money, Tom King also thinks he's funnier than he actually is. And sometimes when that brash quality mixes with his attempts to be funny, some cringy things can happen. And when I saw Wonder Woman sitting at the foot of the Washington Monument at the beginning of this issue, it occurred to me, oh no, they're gonna destroy it again. Like, I really feel like Tom King would do that. Like, that's not outside the realm of possibility. Like, he would make the Washington Monument into his version of that statue that's in front of Kevin McAllister's house in Home Alone that keeps getting knocked down by cars that are pulling up. He would have the Washington Monument just get destroyed over and over and over again just because that's kind of his brash style of humor. That is not, in fact, what happens in this issue, but don't think it couldn't happen, or that it wouldn't happen. By the way, in this issue, there's more poop humor. Like, we literally stop the story so that we can have a full page of poop jokes with the Wonder Girls and Diana's baby. There's only one Tom King, ladies and gentlemen.